Well, good morning. This is a little bit of like breaking the fourth wall right now. Look at the team of people that are required for me to just talk to you. Okay, can you give these guys a round of applause? Thank you guys so much. Wow. Well, good morning. Some of you I've not met, some of you I have. In case you're wondering, my name's Alistair. I normally hang in our BALDIVIS location, but it's my joy to be up in Cannington today. And I want to start today by asking a question. We're going to do a little bit of audience participation. Just wondering, who walked in this morning feeling stressed? Who has got some stress going on in their life right now? Okay, some honest people. I like that. A lot of you are liars. There's some stress. I think there's some people that have walked in today feeling more stressed than they've ever felt in their life. I think they're looking at their to-do list or maybe looking at their schedule or looking at what's going on this week and they're feeling a little bit overwhelmed. I'm going to hazard a guess that there's some people today that came out of a house that felt extremely cluttered and full, and that's not adding to your feelings of peace, in fact, probably producing a bit more anxiety. You then walked out of that very full, busy house and got into a car that maybe is a little bit messy, a little bit cluttered. If it's anything like mine, it might have like 5 or 6 worth of stuff in it, and you're like, I meant to empty it out, but I still haven't, and now there's stuff everywhere. Maybe your life is feeling extremely full. Maybe right now you've got a few different partners on the go and you're a little bit stressed they're going to find out about each other. And you're like, if I go here with this person, I got to put this on Instagram. Maybe, I don't know, maybe that's a word for you, I don't know. Maybe you're just feeling a little bit spiritually busy. You've been searching for an answer. You're wondering, is this all there is to life? And you've pursued a few different things. You've maybe gone down the yoga thing. You've tried that. You've tried some mindfulness. Maybe you've tried a little bit of crystal meditation. And you're kind of feeling like none of this is really answering this deep sense in me of a desire for peace. And why is it that you and I do this? It's because we believe a lie that is taught to us from a very early age. We live in a cultural moment right now where it's really a unique time in history. It started probably in the 1920s, but we've been told a lie basically since we've been born. And that lie is simply, more is better. The more stuff you can have, the more money you can have, the more nice things you can have, the more you can have on your schedule, the more relationships you can have, the more sex that you can get, more is better, better, better. But I think you and I know that as we explore that lie, it probably becomes more and more true to us that it's not true. I think if we actually go back to the dawn of humanity, this is where the lie is introduced. You have this situation where Adam and Eve are at perfect contentment with God. They're in perfect relationship with Him, walking in the garden in the cool of the day, naked and unashamed in the presence of the God of the universe. Nothing to hide at all. And a character enters the story and says, did God really say that you couldn't eat any fruit from any tree in the garden? And the people think about this for a moment and they kind of think, well, no, God said that we could eat from anything except for this one tree. And this character says, well, I think it's because He's hiding something from you. I think actually if you were to eat from that tree, you would gain something that you don't have that will make your life better. What was the lie? The lie was that what you have now is not enough. There is more, and that more will make your life better. But what actually happens is, unfortunately, the complete inverse of that. That desire for more, that lie of more, actually destroyed our relationship with God, sent us into a splintered, shattered, scattered version of life that was far away from God, feels alone, feels destitute in so many ways. And right now, today, all of these thousands of years later, you and I are still striving for that more that we believe will make us happy. And the reality is, for me, that more is not better. And that is the conversation that I'd like to have with you today. What if the stuff that you are holding on to is actually holding you back? What if the stuff in your life that you are holding on to is actually holding you back from the life of purpose, joy, vision, peace that you so deeply desire? Why do I want to talk to you about this? Because we are in week 5 of this series, Habits of a Healthy Heart. If you are just joining us for the first time, you couldn't have chosen a better Sunday. I have got a message that I really am excited to give to you. We've been in this journey because we're trying to understand what is it that makes up a healthy heart rhythm. What are the things that we can do with our days and with our times, with our lives, that will set us up to be healthy people? And that's really coming from this place of the way that we spend our days will be the way that we spend our lives. And if we want to change our lives, we've got to change our habits. But the reality is that if we want to change our habits, we have to ask God to change our hearts. So today, we're looking at this habit of simplifying. Simplifying. Where am I getting this from? Well, there's this incredibly wise guy named of King Solomon. He lived a few thousand years ago. He was the king of Israel for a period of time and was basically crowned as like the wisest guy that ever lived. He writes this very depressing book called Ecclesiastes. If you're ever in a dark place and you want to get into a darker place, go read Ecclesiastes on your Sunday afternoon. But there's one good bit in there. Now, there's lots of good bits, but this is a really good bit that I quite like. He says, better is one handful with tranquility than 2 handfuls with toil and chasing after the wind. And I look at this verse and I just think, wow, that's actually so profound. Because what happens with you and me is that we approach life just like this bowl of jelly beans. Okay, now I don't know what your approach to jelly beans is like. I froth jelly beans. Like, I love them so much. It makes my wife deeply uncomfortable because she understands how disgusting these things are. But I look at them and I'm like, look at it. It's just this yellow, gorgeous, glucosey goodness. And, oh, come on. I could knock out a bag of jelly beans without even thinking. My wife, though, she sees these and she's like, feral. Get those things away from me. But how many of us approach life like this bowl of jelly beans, right? We're looking at it and we go, wow, that's looking pretty good. You know what? I'm going to go double-fisted into what's on offer. Because you know what, people? We only live once. And I'm going to get as much out of life as I possibly can. I'm going to go and earn as much money as I can. I'm going to get as much status as I can. I'm going to fill my schedule as much as I possibly can. I'm going to fill my house with good stuff. I'm going to buy nice furniture. I'm going to put nice wallpaper up. I'm going to have a nice kitchen. I'm going to get the soft closed drawers because I only live once and I want this life to be comfortable. So I'm going in, double hands in. But I'll be honest with you, I'm not a particularly strong guy, okay? And this is not a lot of jelly beans. I'm probably holding 100 grams here. But my arms are already starting to feel pretty tired. Even though there's not a lot of weight, it kind of feels pretty heavy to me. And right now I'm a little bit worried that like if someone were to throw something at me, I'd be in I can't catch that. Look at this. I'm trying and my life is already falling apart. How often does this happen in our lives though, where we have taken on so much and then something gets thrown at us and we have no capacity to catch it outside of throwing everything that we're holding away to catch whatever this thing is that has totally thrown us off guard. This is what Solomon is talking about. We're going to go double hands in, 2 handfuls. This is hard work and it will not give me the peace that I am after. So what's Solomon's advice? I think it's really, really good. He says it's better to live with 1 handful and a bit of peace than 2 handfuls with hard work. Already, I feel significantly lighter and a little bit more flexible. If someone was to throw something at me right now, look at this. I got a hand free. I can catch that. I can look at it. I can decide, is this something I want to bring into my life or not? If it's not, I can throw it away. If it is, I can put it into this hand. I can help someone out. If they need a hand, I can physically reach down and lift them up. I can introduce myself. I can give someone dignity and say, hey, my name's Alistair. Lovely to meet you. Do you know what? I can look at my basket of lots, of plenty, and I can actually take from this and I can give to someone who needs it. I've got a hand free. I can physically surrender to God and say, God, this is enough. Thank you for what I have. When I can live 1 handful with peace, it's significantly better than 2 handfuls with toil. So then the question, how do I do this? How do I live 1 handful with peace? It comes from knowing how much is enough. And how much is enough? It's what you need. How much do you actually need in this life? It's a much shorter list than what you think. Like if we're being like really direct, really honest, you don't need a 7 Series BMW. You know, like you could probably get away with the 3 Series. I'm going to put that out there. It's probably like maybe 40 centimeters more legroom, right? You probably don't need a G-Wagon. You can probably get away with a Land Cruiser. Do you know what I mean? Like how much do you really need? You probably don't need a 7-bedroom house. You can probably get away with 4 or 5. You probably don't need a Tesla. You can probably get away with an MG. I mean, not that you'd want to, but you know, you could. What is Solomon trying to tell us? He's trying to tell us less is actually better. So why is it then that normal people like you and me who agree with this sentiment, I agree, it would be better if my life was less full, why do we still keep coming back to the bowl and getting 2 handfuls? It's not because we don't desire to have a less stressful or more simple life. It's because we're believing this lie that more is better. And it's not just something that we're believing in our head. It's actually something that is deeply nested in our hearts. And thankfully, Jesus actually tackles this issue head on. Because some of you are probably wondering, well, what does Jesus think about this whole thing of possessions and living a simple life? He tackles it directly, and it's honestly very inspiring. This is what he says. Don't store up treasures here on earth where moths eat them and rust destroys them, where thieves break in and steal. Store your treasures in heaven where moths and rust cannot destroy and thieves do not break in and steal. I love the very pragmatic approach of Jesus. He's just like, let's be honest. You can get a bunch of stuff, but it's all going to break and fall apart. So why would you bother? Store the stuff or buy the stuff or get the stuff that's never going to fall apart. And he says this weird thing, store it in heaven. Like what a bizarre, comprehensive, that's very difficult to do. Thankfully, he explains it in the next verse. He says this, wherever your treasure is, there your heart, there the desires of your heart will also be. So what is Jesus saying? He's like, very practically, filling your life with stuff is not a super wise approach because it's all going to fall apart. But also, what you desire in your heart is the person that you will become. And if you are defined by the stuff that you have, when that stuff breaks or falls apart, you will find yourself questioning, who am I? And you've got to remember that this book, for anyone that's new to church, is written by a guy called Matthew. Matthew was a very wealthy tax collector. Terrible guy. Stole money from people. Like the ATO. No, I'm just kidding. The ATO is a great organization. We believe in them. We love you if you work at the ATO. But Matthew, right, literally was a super wealthy tax collector. Meets Jesus. Life is turned upside down. Writes the biography and includes this story, basically saying, I've experienced this and I agree. I had a bunch of stuff, and the stuff didn't satisfy what I wanted in my heart. Now, some of you, I understand you're saying, Alistair, does that mean it's wrong for me to have nice things? Not at all. You can have nice things, but if those nice things define who you are, I'm going to suggest you're going to have some problems. Okay, so we want to try to live this life where we can understand that 1 handful's enough. We keep going to 2 handfuls because we've got something wrong in our hearts. What's wrong in our hearts is we're treasuring something that is changing who we are. And you're probably wondering, just like me, is there any hope at all then for finding contentment and peace in this hyper-materialistic, hyper-consumerist world? Thankfully, there is an answer given to us by a guy by the name of Paul. Paul is an early church guy. His full-time kind of gig for a period of time there was to kill Christians. He was murdering them, having a great time, very successful at it, and then has a radical encounter with Jesus. Life is turned upside down and plants like 13 or 14 churches across the ancient Near East, like very, very, very turnaround kind of story. And he writes this story about what it looks like to be content. He says this, I have learned the secret of being content in every and all situations. I know what you're thinking. What are all of these situations? Well, he tells us, whether I have been well fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. What's the secret? I can do all of this through Christ who gives me strength. So what is Paul saying? He said, I've seen it all. I have been like not eating for like 2 or 3 weeks because I've got no money to scrape together. And I've also lived in like a pretty nice chateau in Rome. And in all of this, I have found the contentment does not come from my circumstance. My contentment comes from my Creator. You and I are on a journey where we're trying to understand, why is this world and this life so stressful and so overwhelming and so blah all the time? It's because we are trying to manipulate our circumstances to give us peace. And what Paul is sharing to us is the secret to that contentment that we so desire won't be found in those circumstances. The secret to that contentment will be found in the presence of God. So why is it that we're so discontent? Because I think if we're being really honest, you and I know in our minds that we shouldn't be. Like, we're in the top 1% of wealth in the world, right? We're all across this. We live in Australia. You live in this country. You are more wealthy than 99% of the world. But we feel discontent because we live next door to someone who earns 10 grand a year more than us. Or we go to work on the freeway with someone whose car is worth twice as much as ours. Or we drive through a neighborhood with houses that are worth 3 or 4 times as much as ours. And so we are discontent because we are constantly comparing ourselves to people that are earning more money than we are, instead of looking downwards and realizing that we are more wealthy than 99% of the world. That's accelerated, of course, by social media, because now you're looking at a fantasy world where everybody else's life seems to be exactly what you want. It's targeted. You've got an algorithm that is feeding you content, showing you how your life is nowhere near as good as everyone else's. And so we feel this discontent because we are in a world that says, look upwards, look how much you don't have, instead of looking at what you do have. And so what do we do with all of this? Because this is all very theoretical. I'm learning, someone told me this one time, Alistair, you like to be communicated to in the way that you like to be communicated to. Not everyone likes that. I was like, geez, that's so helpful. I enjoy reading textbooks. No one enjoys that. So this has all been very theoretical. So what do you do with this? I've got to go to work tomorrow. I get that. I think we need to learn to simplify our lives. How do you simplify your life? I think the first thing you've got to do is you've got to throw out or give away all the stuff that you don't need. How do you know you don't need it? If you haven't used it in the last 12 months, that bad boy has got to go. Okay, notice what's not here. Okay, this does not say throw out, give away, or sell. Okay? Don't sell it because that's going to make the problem worse, okay? Because now you're addicted to the cash flow. Give it away. You have stuff that people, I'm going to hazard a guess, people in this room probably need. And for you, it's sitting in a box in the garage, been sitting there for a while, collecting dust, and someone's like, man, I really need this. Also, if you go back to like the early church, they gave so that no one had any need among them, right? Oh, I don't know how am I going to give it away? It's so difficult. It's really not. There's a thing called Facebook, and you go on there, and there's a thing called a buy nothing, and it's in your area, and you just put up there, here's my stuff, come and take it. And you know what? Crazy. People will come and take it. It's like people like free stuff. I don't get it. Simplify your life. Get rid of the stuff you don't need, because your clutter in your house is changing the way that your brain works. Second thing is you need to clear your schedule. I think very practically, clear your schedule. My family and I do this at the end of every year. We call it Family Summit. We get together. This is me and my wife. We might start inviting the kids, but like, you know, the 4-year-old and the 2-year-old don't have a lot sometimes to contribute to the review of 20. What was the best part of the year? I really like fairy floss. You're like, dude, I agree. Like, so good. The fairy floss we had was very good. So we get together and we reflect on the year that's been. We celebrate all of the wins from the year. We look at the hardship. But in the middle of our family summit, we do something that we call simplifying the calendar. And we have a table that is Monday through Sunday, and we write down everything that our family is committed to on all of those days. And we look at what it's been like for the last couple of years, and we put those standing things on there. And then what we do is we stack it up against what we believe we're called to as a family. We've got a pretty clear family mission and family vision that we worked on for a couple of years. So we kind of know where we want to go as a family. We've got some core family values that we really believe in. And then we take that metric and we look at our schedule and we go, is this schedule helping us build what we feel like we need to build? And if the answer is no, as difficult as it is, that thing has to be removed from our schedule. And so I wonder today, have you just got a schedule that is very filled with things that are not actually helping you become the person, the family, or the life that you actually want. So you've got to clear that schedule. Now, if you're going to do both of those things, throw out a bunch of stuff, clear your schedule, I think the first thing that you really need to do is define what matters most. Because if you get this wrong, you might find yourself throwing out a bunch of stuff that you actually do need. Or maybe you'll clear a bunch of stuff off your schedule that was really valuable. And so you need to define what matters most. How are you going to do that? Very simple. If I said to you, hey, you got 30 days left to live, I think that'd put a pretty clear filter across what's important. I think suddenly, researching the latest iPhone release, that's probably going to come down a few notches on the priority, right? Maybe looking up the specs on the new 300 series Land Cruiser, that's going to come down. Maybe like trolling realestate.com, that's going to come down a few steps. What's going to happen is you're going to spend some time with the people that you love. You're going to spend some time with the God who you know deeply loves you. And you're going to ask yourself, what's actually the most important things to me is actually not things. It's more than likely to do with relationships. So we're going to simplify our life. Second thing, we're going to simplify our faith. I think there are people in the room today, and maybe if you're visiting with us, you're trying to check out church, you know, this bit is probably not for you. This is for some other people in the room, okay? You've been following Jesus for a while. You had an encounter with him at some point in your life. You had your eyes open to the wonder, the glory, the joy of who God is. And you took that God and you said, God, be the center of my life. God, be the center of my life. God, be the center of my life. And suddenly, you put the God of the universe in the background of your life. And you're looking at your world around you, you're looking at your life around you, and you're wondering, God, why are you not more present in my day-to-day? And it's because you reduced the God of the universe to a good teacher, to a good example, to someone that has spoken or taught well, someone that lived a good life. And you have reduced the God of the universe to the background of your life, and you are wondering, why is God not more active in my day-to-day? Because you've made your faith too complicated. You've made it about what you have to do for God or the things you've got to output or the way that you've got to live. You know, there's 4 things that Jesus is really clear about when it comes to accessing the kingdom of heaven. There's only 4 limitations that he basically says. If you want to access the kingdom of heaven in the day-to-day, 4 things. First one is you have got to learn to be childlike. And what does that mean? Okay, the other day I'm at breakfast with the boys, okay, 4-year-old, 2-year-old legends. I'm having some time with the 2-year-old that day, and I say, hey, buddy, where do you want to go this morning? You can go anywhere you want. And he looks at me with his little, cute little 2-year-old eyes, and he goes, with you, Daddy. That's childlike. He does not care where the destination is. He cares who he's going with. For you and for me, we need to simplify our faith, and we need to be childlike, and we need to appreciate it's not about my destination. This life that I'm living, now that I have come to life in Jesus, is actually about where he wants to take me. It's not about where I want to go. So I'm going to be childlike. Secondly, I need to be renewed. You cannot do the Christian life in your own strength. You can't just knuckle down and try really hard and go, you know what, I'm going to live for Jesus. And then you like grit your fingers like it's this horrible job that you've got to do. That's the antithesis of what Jesus is about. It's like, I'm going to work really hard at this thing. No. You need to be strengthened in the presence of God. You can't do this by yourself. Thirdly, you have to be transformed. This is the reality of like walking alongside Jesus, is that you have ideas in your head that have been formed over the last number of decades because of the cultural formation that is happening around you. And you have ideas about what God is like, what life is like, what everything should be like. But the reality is you need God to transform your thinking, to open your mind and your eyes to what the possibilities of life and him actually are. Because what ends up happening, if we've got our own ideas, we end up kind of narrowing things down to something that's really quite definable and controllable. But the reality is the God of the universe is beyond comprehension. And if we try to narrow things down to our own ideas, we miss out on the beauty and the wonder of what God is actually really like. We have to allow him to transform us from the inside out. And then lastly, we've got to be sent. You are a person who was spiritually dead. You are now spiritually alive. God has breathed life into you to accomplish his goals here on earth. And those goals is to see the entirety of humanity brought back into loving relationship with God. And look, this is the reality. This is an incredible church. I love this church. I love Daniel Indrajaya and Michael Rumende. They are two of the most incredible human beings I've ever known in my life. But you know what the reality is? They don't have your neighbors. They don't share a desk with your colleagues. They don't go to sport practice with your same parents. You do. And your role is to help that person encounter the living God of the universe and find the peace and hope that they are so desiring. It's no longer about your goals. It's about what God wants to do with you. Now, some of you in the room, okay, I can feel it. There's some tension, and you're going, Alistair, this all feels a little bit too much. Feels like a lot of work. I'm just going to push that challenge back at you, and I'm just going to ask you, what do you really treasure? What's at the center of your heart? What's at the center of your life? What are you really loving? Because I think if you can reflect on what you treasure, you will find that if you really treasure God, if you really treasure this God that so loved you, that he brought you from death to life, then actually everything that's in there is not really that difficult at all. Because if we want to be with God, why would we not be with God? Why would we not simplify our lives to the point where we've got clear homes that are not oppressing us with their materialism, clear schedules that are not feeling too full for us to be able to have time with God? Why would we not simplify our faith and realize that we are loved not because of what we do, because of what God did? Why don't we do it? Because this is our lives. Right here, this bowl of jelly beans is our lives. Full to the absolute brim with stuff that we don't need. Literal, physical stuff. And this is what happens. I talk to people about this all the time. Alistair, I really want God in my life. I want my life to be about God, but I don't know what it is. I just can't seem to fit God in. I try. I really do. I really want to do all of those things. I want to be renewed in his presence. I want to live a life of purpose, peace, joy, contentment. But I just can't fit it in. And you can't fit it in because your life is so complex and filled with stuff that you don't need. There's no space for God. So you and I, we need to be really bold and we need to go, you know what, as good as this looks from the outside, this is actually not what I want my life to be filled with. I don't want the same generic bowl of jelly bean life that everyone's got. And we've actually got to be brave enough to pour out all of the stuff that is stopping us from filling our lives with what actually matters. Because what you'll find is that once you've gotten rid of that, you've simplified your life, there is suddenly more than enough room for God. Now, if you're anything like me, you get to the end of a talk like this and you're like, cool, I'm fired up. Great, that's great. I'm going to get rid of everything. I did this myself a couple of weeks ago. I cleared out my garage. I found a set of golf clubs. I don't play golf. Played like one round 3 years ago. I guess I took them home with me. I'm sorry. We want to do this. But here's what's going to happen. You're going to try really hard. You're going to simplify your life. You're going to get rid of some stuff. You're going to clear your schedule. You're going to simplify your faith. You're going to believe all those things. And then a week from now, more than likely, you'll feel guilty for not having done it perfectly. And this is what you and I will miss about this whole series. This whole series have been habits of a healthy heart. Now, how do you have a healthy heart? Not from doing too much. And in fact, I would say that the most beautiful way that you can learn to simplify your life, to simplify your faith, to reflect on what you treasure, is to consider what this whole thing's all about. Why does this church exist? This church exists to inspire people to follow Jesus. Now, for us as a community of faith, a community of believers with wide open doors that says, no matter who you are, come on in. If people come in here and we are gripping on for dear life, going, I'm not going to fill my life with stuff, I'm stressed to the max, people are going to be like, I don't want that. That's not inspiring. Like, you're more stressed than I am. I came here for answers. You don't have them. If we want to inspire people to follow Jesus, we have to be inspired by Jesus. So let's just think about this for a minute. Did Jesus live a simple life? Did he learn to simplify? I mean, he is enthroned in heaven, encased in glory, on a throne so beautiful, it's indescribable. The way that one author tries to describe it, he gets a glimpse of heaven. He's like, it's like thunder and lightning and jasper and emerald and rubies, and it's so bright, I can't comprehend it. I can't even understand it. It's invisibly visible. It is so beautiful and perfect and amazing. Jesus lives in the utmost luxury with a chorus of angels singing, holy, holy, holy. And he sacrifices that level of comfort to a feeding trough in the back of a barn in ancient Israel, to a teenage mother and father. I would say that's getting rid of stuff that you don't need. I mean, then look at his actual physical life. Jesus walks around and says it himself, foxes have dens. The Son of Man has no place to lay his head. He is literally homeless. He's given away all of his stuff. The only thing to his name is a nice traveling robe, which ultimately at his death is gambled for because it's that nice. It's all he's got. Simple life. Talk about his schedule. He has the most open schedule ever. There's a story one time where Jesus is moving from one place to another. He's got somewhere he has to be. And he's walking and there's a crowd pressed around him. And someone touches him and he feels power go out of him and heals this woman. And he's obviously got somewhere to be, but instead of carrying on, he stops and has a conversation with a human being to restore to them the dignity that they have been missing for the last number of years. He was never too busy to engage with a human being. 100% that guy simplified his life. I mean, think about his faith. This is the God of the universe. Do you think he had to wrestle with the destination of his life? 100% he did. He's sitting in the Garden of Gethsemane. He's praying to his Father in heaven. And he's saying, God, I do not want to go where you are asking me to go. He is so stressed, he's sweating drops of blood because he does not want to go to the cross to die for you and for me. But he is willing to lay that down. And he says, not my destination, but God's destination. Do you think he wrestled with being renewed in the presence of God? He's a busy guy. He is healing people. He's casting out demons. He's calming nature. He's multiplying loaves of bread and fishes. He's exhausted, and yet what does he prioritize all throughout any of his biographies? He's getting away from the busyness of life to be alone with God. There are times where he stays up the entire night praying just to be refueled in the presence of God. Do you think he had to have his ideas restored and renewed in things that would open up his little earthly mind, limited by a human body? He spent 30 years in complete anonymity. Nobody knew who he was for 30 years. And then suddenly he props up and in 3 years changes the entire course of human history. Because he spent 30 years letting God change him from the inside out to give him ideas that would transform all of human existence. You've got to remember that the whole point of Christianity, the whole point of the narrative of Jesus is that God would be glorified and that people would be joyful. If you walk out of today thinking, if I don't do these things, God won't love me, you have missed the point completely. The whole point is that Jesus did these things perfectly so that you can live in his presence with peace, without any feeling of guilt, without any feeling of shame, without any feeling of, I have not done enough. And so as we're coming to the end of this series, Habits of a Healthy Heart, you have learned, hopefully, 5 very practical habits. But each one of those habits by themselves, done by human effort, will not transform your life. But each of those 5 things, committed to God, placed back in his hands and say, God, please build this in me, that has the potential not only to change your life, but to change your family, to change this church, and to change this city. But you cannot do any of these things in your own strength. You have to learn to sacrifice and put it back in the hands of God and be reminded that he has already done it all. You are loved not because of what you can do for God. You are loved because of what God already did for you. This has been a lot of words. It's been a lot of ideas. It's been a lot of tension. And I think it would be helpful for us if we were to actually stand together now as a whole community, and we're actually going to commit everything that we've just heard back to God and say, Lord, help. And so I invite you now, it's the custom for us to end our gatherings with a prayer of blessings, and the way that we do that is by opening up our hands to receive it. If anything has come up for you today, maybe you're exploring faith, you're new to church, maybe you're an old hat, we've got a team of people down here that would love to pray with you and for you. And if that feels a little bit overwhelming, you can actually jump on the rocks.church/info where there's a prayer request tab, and you can fill in a request there. But if you're willing and able, I invite you now to open up your hands to receive this blessing. Lord God, I just want to pray a blessing over everybody in the room, a blessing of identity, that they would know that right now they are a loved son or a loved daughter of the risen King of the universe. I want to pray a blessing of forgiveness and grace over everyone in the room, that they would know through your death, burial, and resurrection, they have been set free from all sin, all guilt, and all shame. I want to pray a blessing of companionship and power over everyone in the room, that your Holy Spirit would fill our souls as we go from this place. We want to pray, Lord, that we would rest in your strength and your strength alone to be able to do what it is that you've called us to do, that we would know in our heart of hearts. It might not be our destination, it might not be our ideas, it might not be our strength, and it might not even be our goals, but that you are what we want in our lives. And I just pray that blessing of simplification over everyone here. I pray it over their children, their children's children, and every generation to come, that your name would be made famous in all times of history. And it's for your beautiful name that we pray. Amen. Amen. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. If you are new, we've got a team of people who would love to get to know you. Otherwise, we'll see you guys next week.